You read the news and feel it almost physically. Nothing moves. Debates drag on for months. Governments wobble on a handful of seats. Coalitions fracture over details that seem microscopic compared to crises outside the parliament building. Everything feels tense, loud, procedural, and strangely ineffective. It looks like a system that has forgotten how to decide. But this paralysis is not the disease. It is the symptom of a democratic environment that has become structurally hostile to agreement. Let us dive deep into the core problems of democracies and their solutions. This strange emotional temperature of politics today. Disagreement no longer feels technical or ideological. It feels personal. Voters do not merely reject the other side proposals. They reject the other side as people. Policies are evaluated not on substance, but on authorship. The same idea is acceptable when it comes from us, and intolerable when it comes from them. Compromise, once the currency of democratic governance, is now framed as weakness or betrayal. Political scientists attach a label to this pattern: affective polarization. Politics has shifted from competing interests to competing identities. Once identity enters the equation, losing an argument feels like losing dignity. No system built on negotiation can function smoothly under those conditions. Next, notice how difficult it has become to form governments at all. Elections end, and instead of governing, politicians negotiate for months. Agreements are painstakingly assembled, only to collapse under the weight of internal contradictions. Small parties suddenly hold enormous leverage. Entire governments can be brought down by a single defection. The old post-war model of two dominant parties has quietly dissolved across much of the democratic world. In its place stands a crowded marketplace of parties, each representing narrower slices of the electorate. The math is unforgiving. The more parties required to assemble a majority, the more veto players exist, and the more fragile every decision becomes. This is not incompetence. It is arithmetic. It's party system fragmentation. Then there is the machinery itself. Legislatures block executives. Courts block legislatures. Regions block national governments. Presidential systems gridlock. Parliamentary systems implode. What once looked like prudence now looks like sabotage. Democratic systems were intentionally built with brakes, checks and balances meant to prevent tyranny. But these brakes assumed a background of good faith and shared norms. Under intense polarization, they no longer slow recklessness. They immobilize action. Guardrails turn into concrete roadblocks. That's institutional veto overload. Meanwhile, politics appears louder and more chaotic than ever. Every speech, misstep, and provocation circulates instantly. Conflict seems constant. Nothing appears resolved. The reason for this impression: digital platforms financially reward outrage, not accuracy; certainty, not nuance; attack, not explanation. Politicians adapt rationally to irrational incentives. Visibility matters more than viability. Viral opposition beats quiet cooperation. Governance happens off camera. Conflict performs on stage. Viewers conclude that nothing works because they never see work being done. The name for this distortion is incentive-driven media amplification. It is scientifically proven that social media boosts polarization, not only displays it. Finally, look at the problems themselves. Climate change does not respect borders. Financial crises do not wait for election cycles. Artificial intelligence evolves faster than legislation. Migration, pandemics, cybersecurity, and energy transitions produce trade-offs, not solutions. Every action creates winners and losers. Every delay carries costs. Every decision is provisional. That is problem complexity escalation. Democracies were optimized in the past centuries for distributive politics and national problems, dividing budgets, expanding rights, building infrastructure. They now face coordination problems that require long time horizons, scientific uncertainty, and international alignment. Speed is punished. Caution is punished. Any action, any move becomes a liability. Out of this environment emerges another puzzle. Why do elections everywhere end in near ties? No landslides, no decisive mandates. Just 49 to 51 battles repeated again and again. Societies have sorted themselves into two large, stable value clusters, roughly equal in size: urban versus rural, cosmopolitan versus traditional, credentialed versus industrial. These divisions cut across class and income and map neatly onto culture, identity, and media consumption. Neither side can eliminate the other. Both can block. Demography reinforces the stalemate. Older voters lean conservative and vote reliably. Younger voters lean progressive and vote inconsistently. The result is balance without movement, and information bubbles seal it in place. Each camp inhabits its own epistemic universe. Core voters rarely defect. Elections become turnout contests rather than persuasion contests. In two-party systems, this hardens into a near-perfect split. While in multi-party systems, fragmentation resolves itself into two opposing megablocks that cancel each other out. This condition we call polarized electoral equilibrium. The results? Thin majorities govern defensively. Every scandal threatens collapse. Every compromise risks rebellion. Opposition parties gain veto power without responsibility. The perception of illegitimacy grows, not because elections are unfair, but because they are indecisive. Add these together, and democracy looks slow, noisy, and fragile. Many conclude that democracy itself is failing. History suggests something else. Authoritarian systems appear efficient until they collapse silently and suddenly. Democracies process conflict loudly, publicly, and inefficiently. This noise is not decay. It is inherent to the system, ensuring that all voices can be heard so that the best solutions can be found. So let's have a closer look now at the solutions, which will help to fix the problems. And let's start with the emotional freezing of politics itself. If disagreement has become personal, then politics must be pushed back towards substance. That means creating arenas where cross-party cooperation is not electorally suicidal. It means rewarding legislators for co-sponsorship across ideological lines, rather than punishing them in primaries. It means changing internal party rules so that consensus building counts as leadership, not weakness. And it means shifting political competition away from constant symbolic signaling and back toward problem-solving incentives. Let's call this incentive realignment. Next comes the arithmetic problem of governing with too many veto players. If coalition talks take months and governments collapse over marginal disputes, then the system must reduce the leverage of the smallest factions without silencing them entirely. This can be done by raising electoral thresholds slightly, by introducing majority bonuses for coalition blocks rather than individual parties, or by formalizing coalition contracts that make exit more costly than compromise. Fewer actors with absolute veto power does not mean less representation. It means more governability. So what many democracies would need is a party system and coalition rule reform. Now, consider the institutional machinery that is seized up. If every actor can block every other actor, then decision-making must be sequenced rather than simultaneous. That means clearer hierarchies in crisis situations, sunset clauses that force periodic renewal instead of permanent blockage, and procedural fast tracks for legislation that already commands broad support. Checks and balances must remain, but not all checks must apply at all times and in all contexts. In short, we need procedural streamlining to reduce veto overload. Then there is a perception problem, the sense that politics is nothing but noise. If outrage crowds out explanation, then the informational environment itself must change. Platforms can be nudged to privilege verified information over virality. Recommendation systems can be adjusted to reduce the amplification of extreme content. Political actors can be given incentives to communicate outcomes rather than conflicts, and public broadcasters can be strengthened as slow, boring, trustworthy counterweights to algorithmic speed. Once these levers are pulled, the solution becomes visible: media architecture reform. Next comes the hardest challenge of all: problems that no single country, ministry, or election cycle can solve. If modern policy issues punish both speed and caution, then decision-making must be partially insulated from short-term electoral pressure. That means longer planning horizons, stronger roles for independent expert bodies, binding international coordination mechanisms, and policies designed as adaptive processes rather than one-off decisions. Not technocracy replacing democracy, but expertise embedded within it. Let's eliminate the only true advantage that autocracies, in some cases, can have over democracies. Let's introduce long-horizon, expert-backed governance. Finally, return to the legitimacy crisis created by near-tie elections. If thin majorities govern defensively and every compromise looks illegitimate, then trust cannot be rebuilt rhetorically. It must be rebuilt empirically. Governments must deliver visible results, communicate them clearly, admit mistakes early, and demonstrate competence in areas that directly affect everyday life. Trust grows not from grand visions, but from repeated proof that institutions can still perform. Politicians have to start creating performance-based legitimacy. In short, democracies do not fail because they argue too much. They struggle because they are running 20th century institutions inside a 21st century environment. The system is not broken, it is overloaded, and that requires recalibration. Once that becomes clear, paralysis stops looking like collapse and starts looking like a system visibly straining to adapt to a harder, faster, more interconnected world. The real danger is not dysfunction, it is exhaustion. When citizens mistake overload for failure, they become vulnerable to promise of strong alternatives that remove friction by removing our highest good: freedom.